everything litty. I love when it's hot. Turned to the city, I broke all the knots. Got some more millies, I keep.
What is going on, you beautiful bastards? It's your boy Set a Reaction. We're back with another reaction. Today we got a long one. We got every South Park controversy explained. This is a bit different than what we usually watch, but I think this is going to be interesting. Not only for South Park fans, but I think this is like very in-depth video, so I think this is going to be really interesting. Kind of like internet historian type of vibe, in my opinion. I have no idea. I've never watched this before. I wanted to try something different, you know, put it up on the channel, see if you guys like it or not, see if you guys want more of it. So if you do, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, letting me know what you'd like to see next. If you want something similar or not, let me know as well. And subscribe if you haven't done it yet. Anyway, I hope you guys are ready. Let's get it. Let's go.
All right, class, go ahead, settle down. Settle down for me. Now, you may be asking why I only appear to be an upper body. Well, it's because that's all I could afford when I had this commissioned, but that is irrelevant now. Today, we will be having a pop quiz. Now, what is the most controversial TV show of all time? Okay, time's up. If you said anything other than South Park, you not only fail, but you are expelled from this university and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, for those of you that are still here, a follow-up question. Why is South Park so controversial? The correct answer is consistency. Allow me to explain. There has existed many controversial shows in the time since the television was first invented. And sure, there may have been some obscure shows so offensive that they were canceled after a season, but there has never been a show that has managed to become involved in major controversy as consistently as South Park. They have managed to stay controversial for 25 years at this point, and thanks to an absolutely absurd deal struck with the creators and Viacom, they don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. Speaking of that, Viacom, I see that you have lots of money considering you're able to pay these guys almost $1 billion, so I would really much appreciate it if you stop trying to take my videos down. I work really hard on them, and I love your show, and so pretty please be kinder to me. Thank you. What were we talking about? Oh yeah,
that goes for every fucking copyright claimers out there. This is like, sometimes I'll have 3 hours long, 4 hours long videos that I streamed like 7 months ago, and they're taken down for a 10-second clip that there's music in it in the 4-hour-long video. Like, this is fucking wild. The YouTube, get your shit together.
Because of everything I just explained, I thought it would be fun to go back and chronicle every major South Park controversy I could find and explain it to the best of my abilities. And a quick side note, I know this isn't a super original idea. I mean, Watch Mojo has done a top 10 list on the controversies, and they've also done a top 20 list. And the top 20 list is literally just 10 extra controversies before it gets to number 10, where they just copy and pasted the original top 10 with no acknowledgement. Okay, well, now I don't feel as bad about doing a similar video. So, with the intro out of the way, let's get into it. Every South Park controversy explained.
There's a lot of them.
So, knowing the content of this video, there's a pretty good chance that it will get demonetized.
Oh, yeah.
So, to try to combat that, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
There it is.
Raid Shadow Legends just celebrated their 3rd anniversary.
You guys know the deal. I don't skip people's ads. If you want to skip through, you can skip through. I won't do it.
As one of the top RPG games out there.
Doesn't mean I'm going to listen.
Seriously,
but
this game started strong from the very beginning and never slowed down. The thing that really blows my mind is that even after establishing themselves as a leading mobile game, they didn't allow themselves to take a step back and rest, and they just kept adding new content and game modes every couple of months. So let's go ahead and check out some of the amazing things that happened in the game during those 2 years. One amazing addition was the Doom Tower. This game mode introduced a whole world of new and terrifying bosses to slay, sprawling over 120 levels. The Doom Tower brought exciting new challenges for even seasoned players. And of course, the bosses and heroes. As a high-level collection RPG, Raid started with hundreds of unique characters and bosses, but that did not stop them from adding more and more new champions. The game designers must have had a field day creating these amazing characters. Just check out some of these sketches, they're so cool. And if new characters wasn't enough, last year Raid added a whole new faction. The Shadowkin are a tribe of warriors from the Far East, recently liberated from the reign of evil, but that doesn't mean they're good guys either. For me, they're one of the coolest looking factions in the game. And of course, I can't talk about it without addressing the newest and biggest addition to Raid. I'm talking about the Hydra Clan boss. It's without a doubt the biggest, baddest, and scariest boss to ever set foot in Teleria, although I'm not sure the Hydras even have feet. This monster has multiple hands, each with a different ability, and requires a different strategy to destroy. But here's where it gets really challenging. Even if you manage to chop one of the heads, another one grows to replace it. It can be quite discouraging, but on the other hand, this boss gave me some of the best artifacts in the game. Honestly, this game is great whether you're a casual or hardcore player, and this month they're running an event where you get to play as Deliana, a brand new champion from the High Elves faction, just by logging in. All you have to do is log in 7 days between now and July 20th, and you'll get your hands on her for free. She's one of the strongest in the entire game, so I would definitely recommend doing this. Right now is the best time to get started in Raid because if you click the link in the description or scan this QR code, you'll get a free starter pack worth almost $40. You'll get 3 free champions plus 10 magic XP brews, 10 force XP brews, and 10 spirit brews. The champions are Misericorde, Tiger Soul, and Romero, which is a huge deal because in the past they've only given 1 champion, so do not miss your chance. Also, if you enter this promo code, you will get 50 XP brews instantly to your legendary hero Deliana to get max level, as well as a ton of silver. So what are you waiting for? Download this game right now from my link in the description and get started, and thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video.
And we're back. For those of you who skipped through, I always pause at the end of ads so you don't get lost. Let's get her going.
To this day, South Park will still find itself in the occasional controversy. However, the public response to the show today is practically non-existent when compared with how it was received when it was first aired.
Right.
In 1997, the social landscape of the US was very different to how it is today. Vulgarity on television was practically non-existent at the time, so to put it in perspective, when The Simpsons aired in 1989, it was considered by many to be crude and offensive. Now you could only imagine how those same people reacted when South Park aired and made The Simpsons look about as crude as Full House.
You got it, dude.
To go from clean, sanitized, inoffensive sitcoms dominating popular television to a cartoon made for adults that is quite possibly one of the most vulgar pieces of media ever made, I mean, you're going 0 to 100 in record time here. Unsurprisingly, a lot of people did not like the content of the show. The existence of this vulgarity was bad enough to the general public, but what really sealed the deal was the fact that the main characters saying and doing these things were young children. It also didn't help that adult cartoons were very uncommon at the time, so a non-observant parent may see their children watching the show and think they're watching a kid's show while they're really watching the most adult show on television. Reportedly, when screening the pilot episode to test audiences, 3 people burst into tears over the show's content. The backlash was...
Man, people back then were so soft. Holy shit. We always talk about, we're soft now. Yeah. You remember, Thriller from Michael Jackson? People were apparently running out of theaters because it was so scary. What the fuck, bro?
immense, including everything from campaigns to get the show taken off the air to schools banning South Park clothing entirely. It's pretty funny looking back, since this early South Park is incredibly tame in comparison to what the show would become, and of course, that only brought with it more controversy. Despite its controversial existence, the show didn't experience much major controversy related to specific themes outside of the vulgarity for the first 3 seasons. That is, until South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut was released in 1999.
Right.
Creating a movie meant Matt and Trey were not limited to the rules they had to follow creating a television show, as they were always dancing on the line of what was allowed to be shown on television and what wasn't. Because of this, they sprinted straight for the line of what was allowed to be shown in movies and set up camp there. In the production of the movie alone, the team had tons of issues with the MPAA and Paramount, who attempted to censor or block content so many times that this video would be an hour longer if I talked about all of them. So here are just a few of my favorites. The original name for the movie was South Park All Hell Breaks Loose, but the MPAA would not approve this name because it had the word hell in it, so Trey came up with Bigger, Longer, and Uncut and it was approved. Only later did the MPAA realize what the name actually meant, and they attempted to block this title, but they were prevented from doing so. When writing the script for the movie, Matt and Trey were made aware that at the time, the MPAA required any movie with 400 or more swear words to be rated NC-17. They couldn't have their movie rated NC-17 due to their agreement with Paramount, so can you guess how many swear words they included in the movie?
399.
Yeah, it was 399.
Yeah, of course it is.
Now, the public's reaction to the movie was basically what you would expect if you released a significantly longer and more offensive episode of South Park. People called for it to be banned, it was banned in a bunch of countries, people thought it marked the end of Western civilization as we know it, yada yada yada, you get the picture. Ironically, the backlash to the movie mirrored the predictions made in the movie itself, minus the whole war starting and everything. But the creation of this movie is what made Matt and Trey want to push the boundaries even further, and it marked the beginning of a major change in the tone of the show moving forward. In the eyes of the public, it was no longer just a crude and inappropriate show, it was an attack on the beliefs of everyone.
That's wild. That's wild.
Season 4 is where we first begin to see the signs that this show may be more than just crass humor, and recognize the potential for controversy with a few minor ones throughout the season. Episode 5, Cartman Joins Nambla, was banned from airing on the British satellite channel Sky One, as it contained many references to the actions of the group Nambla, which is somehow a real-life group and whose actions I will not detail here. Later in the season, we get one of our first glimpses at how well the show can handle contentious issues with Chef Goes Nanners, which discusses the implications of continuing to use a flag that was used in times of racism. The message was way ahead of its time, and while today the episode has aged like fine wine, when it was released there was a small amount of backlash, mostly due to seeing it as racist. Then in episodes 9 and 10, Do the Handicap Go to Hell and Probably, this is the first time the show really committed entire episodes to parodying religion. Specifically, they parodied the fear-mongering and money-focused ideals that some Christian churches are known for. Unsurprisingly, this episode garnered a bit of controversy, as poking fun at Christianity in a predominantly Christian nation in the early 2000s generally would. However, this was the last of any sort of controversy for Season 4, and we made it through with only a few small incidents.
Maybe, but that's not the last controversy regarding religion. God damn, do they push on that.
So, surely they wouldn't do something in the premiere of Season 5 that would be such a big deal it would literally change television forever. Right?
Okay.
We already discussed the backlash the show received in its earliest seasons, and as the show continued past its third season, the controversy slowed down as people accepted that the show wasn't going anywhere. That is until this episode, when they decided to say the swear word that begins with S many, many times uncensored. The episode made fun of the public's reaction to an episode of Chicago Hope, in which the word was said uncensored for the first time on TV. The episode includes the word being said 162 times, conveniently displayed by a counter in the bottom right corner. Initially, the creators only wanted to say it a few times, but Comedy Central refused, so they came up with the idea to say the word as many times as possible so that it lost all and any meaning, and it was meant to show that it's just a word and it has no real power.
Yeah.
They mostly succeeded in this since the episode itself didn't receive all that much backlash, relatively speaking. Supposedly, Comedy Central received nearly 5,000 email complaints from different organizations and people,
Of course they
but
did.
besides that, there were no large-scale protests or news stories covering the episode. This episode was surprisingly important to television as a whole, since it basically paved the way for this type of language to exist on television, and whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, it undoubtedly changed the television landscape forever.
Good. That's good.
A clever satire of sex education and the age at which it's taught that is portrayed through extremely graphic depictions of some pretty disturbing things. The real controversy here was in the broadcasting. In Australia, the episode aired later than its usual time slot, and once again, the British channel Sky One outright refused to air the episode. In America, the Parents Television Council went as far as to cite the episode as an example of how the show is quote-unquote dangerous to democracy. If anyone can explain how exactly a cartoon about sex ed is dangerous to democracy, go ahead and explain in the comments down below.
Yeah,
Since
please let me know.
All repeats and DVD versions included edited scenes, particularly one with Mr. Garrison teaching the kindergartners how to perform the old rubber mouth technique. Comedy Central didn't even want to air the scene in the first place, but it did for the initial screening and then never again.
Jared.
When this episode first aired, it was considered very controversial. And no, it's not because it focuses on Jared from Subway.
Yeah,
all of his
Subway
controversies
guy.
wouldn't come out until years later. Rather, the episode makes countless references and jokes to the AIDS virus. And while it wouldn't be very controversial to do this today, in the early 2000s it definitely was. The ending also includes Butters being beaten by his parents, and this combo of content meant that the episode was banned from airing on Comedy Central for years after it was released, though it was eventually allowed to air again. In an ironic twist, the day Jared accepted a plea deal for his crimes, Comedy Central aired the episode back-to-back nearly all day, and it really showcased how poorly some of the lines have aged.
I'm gonna seek out all the underprivileged and hungry children of the world, and I'm going to give them AIDS myself!
You're gonna give children AIDS?
That didn't come out. That didn't.
This one is less of a backlash from the public as it is backlash from one individual, that individual being Jennifer Lopez. This episode goes pretty hard on her, painting her as a rude, entitled woman who is quick to violence when she hears something she doesn't like. It has been reported by people that have worked on movie sets with her that she is so unhappy about her depiction in this episode that she has gone as far as to fire those working on the set who even as much as referenced the episode.
What
Trey
the fuck?
Parker has claimed that he once saw Jennifer Lopez at a party where she proceeded to push past him rather aggressively without any acknowledgement. I think it's fair to say that she's close to the top in terms of bad celebrity reactions to South Park.
My name is Jennifer Lopez. I eat tacos y burritos.
That's so petty,
One of the
bro.
more iconic South Park controversies, some backlash followed the release of the episode All About Mormons, in which the show tackles Mormonism as a whole. The episode pokes fun at the absurdity of the beliefs of the Mormon people and the circumstances that their prophet Joseph Smith created to ensure his message was heard. It's not subtle in its criticism, and at times it can seem a bit harsh, especially as the episode progresses and you begin to realize that the tune playing in the back is actually giving its opinion on the matter.
In America? Really? That sounds kind of...
Dum 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 dum.
In contrast, the episode portrays the Mormon people as incredibly kind and happy people who are able to roll with any of the punches thrown their way. So while the
Okay.
episode is pretty scathing in its satirization of the religion itself, it depicts the people who practice it as a somewhat self-aware and understanding group. This was very much proven in the reception to the episode, as according to Wikipedia, the Church of the Latter-day Saints responded to the episode by first acknowledging that they believed the episode was a gross portrayal of church history, but would go on to say that they believed it, quote, inflicted no perceptible or long-lasting damage to the church. So ironically, even though this episode is considered very controversial, it's
I don't think you can inflict lasting damage to a religion regardless of what you say about it, because people who believe will believe and people who don't believe won't believe. And that's as far as it goes, really, and it doesn't hurt anyone to believe or to not believe. That's my stand on it.
seems like the Mormons
Vince?
themselves
I don't
didn't
know.
really
That's where I
mind the
stand,
episode
though.
too much. And by doing so, they really proved the episode correct about their ability to take criticism on the chin. The resilience would once again be shown when Matt and Trey would release their Broadway musical, The Book of Mormon, a few years later, in which the church would respond by saying, quote, "The production may attempt to entertain audiences for an evening, but the Book of Mormon as a volume of scripture will change people's lives forever by bringing them closer to Christ." They even went as far as to buy ads in the show's playbill where they would put things like, "You've seen the show, now go read the book." Honestly, I think that's hilarious.
That's funny as shit.
While Season 8 mostly avoided
Oh,
any serious
shit.
backlash from the public, Season 9 is when the show really began to hit its stride in terms of stirring up controversy. This episode is actually far more controversial today for the reasons you may be thinking. Many would consider this episode to be pretty transphobic in its messages and themes.
Oh yeah.
However, back in 2005, this was an issue that only a small minority of people cared about, therefore it was
Right.
mostly ignored. However, that doesn't mean the episode avoided controversy at the time, as not too many people were happy about the real sex change footage that was intertwined into the episode's opening minutes. Even worse, it was apparently supposed to last for 5 minutes due to the lack of ideas for the episode.
Oh my
Comedy
god.
Central said no, because of course they did. How are they even allowed to
Right.
show it? Like, there has to be laws or regulations against it or something, right? And though the alleged transphobia wasn't a big issue for the episode, it would be far from the last time the show would be labeled in this way.
Ginger kid?
This controversy is a perfect example of what I believe to be one of the
My
few
God.
downfalls of South Park, that being the audience. This episode follows Cartman as he puts on full display his hatred and intolerance of ginger people. The episode itself is supposed to be satirizing discrimination as a whole, making fun of people like Cartman who choose to be hateful to others because of how they look and the absurdity of that hatred.
Right.
The issue arises when people, mostly kids, who don't understand that it's satire, see the episode and find it funny because of the hate. And while obviously the show is not made for kids, whether it's irresponsible parents or sneaky behavior, they will find a way to watch it, which leads to things like Kick a Ginger Day, a real-life holiday in which you're supposed to kick gingers. I discussed this more in my South Park Iceberg, so if you're
Wild.
interested in that, you can check it out. But honestly, I think it would be hard to argue that this episode didn't have a pretty large part in the discrimination against gingers among kids. In the Wikipedia article for discrimination against people with red hair, the history section for the US literally begins with the release of this episode, with no
Oh
recorded
my
history
God.
before. Just ask the Gingers Have Souls kid.
Ginger Have
Basically
Souls.
exclusively blames this episode for his bullying and harassment. And the same with Ed Sheeran, who also blamed this episode for the bullying that he received. I don't believe it's the show's fault necessarily, since the episode is actually preaching against these intolerant mindsets.
Right.
But I don't think anyone disagrees that the whole situation is a product of kids consuming media that they shouldn't be and misinterpreting the messages. It's really just a product of bad parenting and yada yada, you get it.
Yes, it is.
What is probably the second biggest controversy in the show's history? This one caused lawsuits, cancellations, private investigations, and the departure of one of the show's most beloved characters. This episode heavily criticizes the quote-unquote religion, Scientology, as they portray it as a massive global scam whose sole intentions are to prey on vulnerable people and extract money from them. They also parodied their willingness to sue anyone who speaks negatively about them, and even acknowledges the church's history of getting revenge on those who have wronged them by changing all the names in the credits of the episode to Jane and John Smith. Shockingly, the church wasn't too fond of the episode's portrayal of their religion. They were so unhappy that they conducted a full investigation to try to dig up any negative things they could about Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Oh, wow.
According to a church whistleblower, they used techniques, quote, comparable to Cold War era CIA and KGB intelligence and propaganda techniques, doing things like going through their trash, purchasing their phone records, and going through their bank records. They even went as far as to attempt to hire a film student to get a job at South Park Studios so they could act as a spy in their investigation. But despite their efforts, they have yet to release anything negative or embarrassing about the creators, so it's safe to assume they were unable to find anything. Then there was the legendary Closet Gate. The episode heavily targets Tom Cruise,
in the
who
closet.
is a known Scientologist. They wanted to joke about the popular belief that Tom Cruise is secretly gay, but they were informed by their lawyers that they could not outright say he was, as Cruise had a history of litigation against those discussing his sexuality. To get around this, they decided to place him in an actual closet.
Why do you care so much about that you sue people? That's fucking crazy, bro. Chill the fuck out.
For a good portion of the episode, constantly discussing his unwillingness to leave said closet.
Dad, Tom Cruise won't come out of the closet.
Despite this, the actor allegedly still threatened to sue the show, which he never ended up doing. But that was far from the end of the Tom Cruise storyline, as the next year, a scheduled rebroadcast of the episode was suddenly canceled with no warning or explanation given as to why. Several news outlets reported that the parent company of Comedy Central, Viacom, had the episode pulled. Supposedly, this was because Tom Cruise had threatened to cancel his publicity tour for the next Mission Impossible movie if the episode aired. The movie was owned by Paramount, who is also owned by Viacom.
What a joke of a human being. I'm sorry, but if you care that much, you've got bigger problems than that, bro. You need therapy, bad. If you're that uncomfortable with your sexuality that a joke about you maybe being gay offends you that badly, you need help.
There was never any evidence to suggest that this was true, and Tom Cruise would go on record to claim that he hadn't requested to have the episode removed. Reportedly, however, there are several inside sources that maintain that Cruise had the episode pulled. And of course, this didn't sway the opinion of the public, who were outraged by the pulling of the episode. A petition was even created to re-air the episode, garnering 5,000 signatures. And while this is where the controversy ends with the Tom Cruise storyline, the effects of the episode could be seen elsewhere, as it led to the departure of one of the show's most beloved characters. Isaac Hayes, the voice actor for Chef, was a Scientologist, and after the airing of the episode, he reportedly published a statement berating the episode for its parody of the religion and quitting from the show altogether. When this initially happened, Parker and Stone were quick to call him out for the hypocrisy of his exit, discussing how he was fine with poking fun at everyone else, but not himself. Years later, Hayes' son would come out and say that he had never quit the show, and that other Scientologists wrote the statement for him while he was in the hospital after suffering from a stroke. Unfortunately, Hayes passed away 2 years after the episode at the age of 65 due to a stroke. Many have called into question the mysterious circumstances of his death, since he was found next to a treadmill in his home. Many speculate Scientology may have had something to do with this, and I discussed this theory in depth in my South Park Iceberg, so if that interests you, go check it out. One thing that is certain is that this episode undoubtedly caused more real-world consequences than almost any other episode in the series. Notice how I say almost. We'll get to that.
It's missing the Muhammad episode.
In this episode, Randy is cured of the horrible disease of alcoholism due to a miracle from a statue of the Virgin Mary. Specifically, he is one of the lucky ones to be covered in the blood being excreted from its... Well, you can see the clip. In a shocking turn of events, the Catholic Church was not too happy about this one. The Catholic League not only demanded an apology from Comedy Central, but also demanded the episode be pulled from air and never released on DVD. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops sent a letter to the CEO of Viacom claiming that the network showed, quote, extreme insensitivity by airing the episode. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, the Catholic Bishops' Leader Conference lobbied the network to stop the episodes from being broadcast altogether. They were rejected, and the leading Catholic bishops called for a boycott of the network altogether. The Prime Minister of New Zealand even weighed in, stating that the episode sounded, quote, revolting, but the network was free to air it anyways. One advertiser even withdrew from the network altogether. Despite all of the protests, the episode aired anyways, actually earlier than expected to take advantage of the media surrounding it, and it managed to pull 6 times the amount of normal viewers South Park would get.
Yeah,
In
not surprised.
Australia, Archbishop Dennis Hart wrote the network asking that they pull the episode. And while the episode was postponed, it did eventually air almost a year later. I've always found it funny that this episode seemed to enrage so many Catholics, as it doesn't even make fun of Catholicism at all, really. It's a commentary on self-control and discipline surrounding alcohol abuse.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the true message of the episode is. There's always an underlining thing that happens in the episodes that will, I guess, be offensive to some people. It doesn't matter whether it's a religious group or an ethnicity or trans rights. It doesn't matter. There's always someone that's going to be offended by South Park, because by the way they show their message, or like the true message of the episode, is by sort of poking fun at a group of people.
The whole Virgin Mary thing was just a way to get their point across. It probably stemmed more from the idea of sacredness in religion, since many saw it as a desecration of a sacred figure, but it was really just a dumb joke they used to get their point across.
Yeah, pretty much what I'm saying.
I will only briefly mention this
Cartoon
one as it
Wars.
functions as a precursor to an episode coming up, but the episode planned on showing the Muslim prophet Muhammad as a commentary on the Jyllands Posten Muhammad cartoons controversy. I definitely did not pronounce that right. In which a Danish newspaper published a comic depicting Muhammad. There was widespread protest and even some violence around the world because of this. Comedy Central were initially okay with showing Muhammad, but as part 2 was in production, they decided to censor the scene with Muhammad. Parker and Stone were not happy about this, calling the censorship, quote, wimpy. They were especially upset because South Park had depicted Muhammad years earlier in the episode Super Best Friends with no issues.
Right.
Since then, all 3 episodes have been banned from TV and pulled from streaming services, with Super Best Friends being pulled long ago and Cartoon Wars being pulled only when the show recently moved to HBO Max.
Yeah, I remember that
More
one being a
minor
huge controversy.
This one stemmed from the episode's depiction of Steve Irwin. Irwin had died 7 weeks earlier from a freak accident with a stingray, and in the episode he can be seen at Satan's birthday party with a stingray sticking out of his chest. Many people felt it was simply too soon and that it was done in poor taste. Irwin's wife made a statement discussing her devastation in the show's mocking portrayal of him, and her main worry was that their children may see the episode one day. I obviously understand why people were upset about this, but personally I find it funny that this is what caused controversy, considering the same episode literally featured serial killers Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and Jeffrey Dahmer doing a Three Stooges routine while being unable to stop themselves from murdering.
Oh my god.
Hey, that's just me. The irony in this one is that the only real issue people had with this episode was the lack of controversy. The episode tackles the implications that the N-word has on society. It does a great job in doing this, and if you want to hear me dive deeper into it, then you can go check out my first video on this channel. The episode contains 43 uncensored uses of the N-word, and yet this episode actually received positive feedback from civil rights organizations like the NAACP, who praised the episode for accurately depicting other races' perceptions of how black people feel when hearing the word. The only person that seemed to be upset was the founder of the Parents Television Council, L. Brent Bozell, who issued a statement criticizing the lack of protest, comparing it to the outrage radio host Don Imus received for his statements. Severe misunderstanding of context aside, I'm sure he still got the point of the episode.
All I know is it's not the only time that they've used the N-word. They've used that word a lot in South Park, and it's always like shocking when they hear it because you don't when they say it because you don't like expect it. So I guess shock humor.
Non-black people have a lack of understanding of how it feels to hear that word used, and that it's not really their place to make these kind of statements. as well as just how hilariously ironic it would be for a white person to make a statement like this. So let's go ahead and check and take a look at what this man looks like. Surely he wouldn't... Oh, well, I think that tells us everything we need to know.
Right. That's an
This one
R,
was
that's
pretty
not an
minor
L.
as well. This episode features some pretty graphic and violent depictions of an assault on Indiana Jones, and obviously there were a lot of people that were upset about this. An insider even claimed that while Paramount had no plan to protest the episode, they were not big fans and, quote, wanted it to go away. You all probably know my opinion of this episode by now. I think that what they were trying to do is a funny idea. I just think the execution was a little overboard.
Yeah.
They definitely didn't have to take it as far as they did, but
No, they
hey,
did
this
take
is
it
South
really
Park we're
far.
talking about. No one crosses the line quite like them, so while I'm not a fan of this episode, I can still respect it for the risks being taken.
I remember this one.
This one pokes fun at the leaders of nations all across the
Yeah.
world, but it would seem that Mexico's president Felipe Calderon didn't take it as well as the other leaders. The episode was pulled from MTV Mexico, with the network claiming that they couldn't get permissions to use the Mexican flag in time. Though Mexican fans of
Okay,
South
dude.
Park were skeptical of this and cried censorship. The episode was eventually rebroadcasted in Mexico, but only after permission from the Ministry of Interior, so it's pretty safe to say that they probably pulled the episode.
Yeah, that's fucking wild.
We have finally reached South Park's magnum opus in terms of controversy.
Yeah.
Not only is this the South Park episode that stirred up more real-world controversy than any other, an argument can be made for it being one of the most controversial episodes of any television show ever.
Right.
To celebrate
Yeah,
the
I remember
200th
this one very
episode,
well.
Matt and Trey decided to go back and basically reignite every single controversy they've ever had.
Yeah.
From Tom Cruise to Jennifer Lopez, almost all of their celebrity digs were back on full display. But of course, they had to go
Tiger
back and
Woods.
visit one of their largest controversies, the depiction of the Muslim prophet Muhammad. In part 1, there are heavy implications that Muhammad would be shown in next week's episode. After part 1 was released, radical Muslim group Revolution Muslim heavily implied that if Muhammad was shown, there would be action taken against both Matt and Trey and Comedy Central. They included references to Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, who was assassinated by a radical Muslim after publishing books criticizing Islam. Matt
Hey, man. You know? Chill the fuck out, maybe? Like, not telling you how to live, but if the way you think living properly according to your beliefs is by ending other people's lives, then perhaps you should start with yours. I don't think killing anyone helps anyone. Take the joke, and if you're not able to, move the fuck on. That's where I'm
Matt
gonna
and
leave
Trey
it.
seemed pretty unfazed by this, as it was their belief that giving in to these threats would be not only hypocritical, since the entire premise of the episode is defending free speech and condemning terrorism, but they would also be allowing terrorism to work and creating a slippery slope for censorship of free speech. The
Right.
same could not be said about Comedy Central, who were more than willing to give in to the demands of this group. Because of this, when the episode aired, every single use of the name Muhammad was censored, every appearance of Muhammad himself was censored, and Kyle's entire speech at the end of the episode discussing the effectiveness of terrorism was completely censored. And if that wasn't
I'm not
enough,
surprised.
not only were both episodes pulled from ever being rebroadcasted again, they were removed from South Park's website, every streaming service that the show is on, and every DVD set of the show except for the Region 1 release of the 14th season. This
Right.
brings the total of banned South Park episodes to 5, along with the previously mentioned Cartoon Wars and Super Best Friends. Though the episodes have
I would have thought it was more than 5, if I'm being completely honest. I would have thought it was a lot more than 5.
been practically wiped off the face of the earth in terms of legal methods of watching it, it can still be found re-uploaded on the internet. It just takes a bit of searching. Years after release,
Just
a
like anything,
4chan
really.
user was also able to find a partially uncensored version of the episode through a glitch in the South Park Studios website, and for the first time we knew what Kyle said in his speech. Again, I talk about this in my South Park Iceberg video, or you can find the full clip floating around pretty easily if you're interested, but yeah, you can check that out if you want. Despite the threats and the situation becoming a national news story, no violence or action was ever taken against Matt and Trey or anyone at Comedy Central.
Okay.
Obviously, Matt and Trey were very unhappy with the censorship, but despite this, they're still with Comedy Central and occasionally will reference the situation in interviews or through the show. They've even been able to sneak in a shot or two of Muhammad without Comedy Central noticing. without Comedy Central noticing.
They did. They did. Oh my god, what a great fucking game.
A controversy as big as the last one is a pretty tough act to follow in terms of generating controversy, and because of that, it would be nearly 14 years before South Park would generate another truly noteworthy controversy. This would come not in the form of an episode of the show, but rather with the release of their new video game, South Park: The Stick of Truth. I discussed this topic in great detail again on my iceberg, so I recommend you check it out, but the short version is this. Europe and Australia have been known to be a lot stricter on what can be shown in their media, so because of this, Ubisoft decided to censor certain parts of the game that they assumed would cause problems in those regions. Censored scenes include alien probing, performing abortions, and some special censoring in Germany, where certain imagery is illegal. They replaced the censored content with this mocking splash screen, and that was that. It wouldn't be until season 23 that the show would have another noteworthy controversy. I was going to talk about the Netherlands pulling the season 19 episode sponsored content due to Garrison's comments on Syrian refugees, as well as the show's half apology to Al Gore in season 22 after ridiculing climate change in the past, but those seem pretty minor to me, so I figured I would just mention them here. But anyways, remember how I mentioned that it wouldn't be the last time South Park would be accused of transphobia? Well,
Of course
here we are.
not.
In Bored Girls, Strong Woman competes in a Strong Woman competition as a heavy favorite for first place.
Right.
That is until she meets one of her competition, Heather Swanson, who is a trans woman. She's modeled in the image of Macho Man Randy Savage, along with the trademark style of speaking, and she absolutely destroys the competition with no issue. After this was released, the absolute
wild.
cesspool known as Twitter broke into a fit of rage. Not saying it's a cesspool because of this, I'm just saying it.
You're telling me it's not what's happening right now, though? You're telling me it's not what's happening right now, though? Fuck Twitter, this is happening right now. That's all I'm
Is in
saying.
general because that website sucks. Many people were horrified by the show's depiction of trans athletes, and many even called for its cancellation. It was labeled transphobic by countless reviewers and journalists, as many discussed the implications of the episode and the effects it could have on trans people. Obviously, nothing ever came of any of this besides the hate mob, but the
Well, yeah, of
situation does
course.
raise an interesting question about the show's attitude towards trans people. To go off on a bit of a tangent, I would like to give my own opinion. Personally, as someone who is unqualified to speak on this topic, being both
Same.
not female and not transgender, I don't believe that this episode is transphobic.
No,
In
I don't
reality,
either.
the episode contains very little commentary on trans athletes because Heather Swanson isn't really meant to represent trans athletes. It's revealed throughout the episode that she is Strong Woman's ex-boyfriend, who transitioned solely to get revenge on her because he felt like she had beaten him by breaking up with him. This insecurity of losing to a girl is what drives him to do this. In reality, Heather Swanson is more of a representation of these male insecurities than a commentary on trans athletes. This is mostly confirmed by the subplot in which Cartman feels the same way after losing to the girls in their board game club, going as far as to lobby to have girls not allowed in the club. I personally read the commentary on trans athletes as pretty insignificant, basically presenting both sides through the Cartman plot and the Strong Woman plot, and closing without ever really making a point on the issue besides, this is a controversial topic. That's just my opinion on it. Maybe I completely misread it and it really was meant to be taken at face value, but I'd be interested to know what you guys think about it, whether you think it's transphobic, and whether you think the show as a whole is transphobic. So,
But is the discussion about trans athletes in women's sport itself transphobic? Because if the discussion is transphobic, then we can't have discussions about anything anymore. I think the discussion is important. I think you can have a discussion about it without it being transphobic. I hope.
so go ahead and let me know in the comments. Well, we have finally reached the most recent major South Park controversy. Technically, Bored Girls came out after this episode, but I wanted this one to be last. Anyways, this episode tackles media in China and how many companies like Disney and the NBA will censor and change certain aspects of their media in an effort to please the Chinese censors, as China has an incredibly rigid control over the media in their country. As you may have gathered by now, Matt and Trey are not the biggest fans of censorship. Hence
No, they're
why
not.
this episode attacks both China and the companies willing to censor and change their content just to tap into the massive market that is China. They basically see it as giving up your dignity just to make more money, and they make it very clear in this episode. After it was released, the Chinese government completely banned South Park from the country, basically wiping away any trace of it on the internet and TV. And in true South Park fashion, the creators did not show a hint of caring, going
They don't
as
care.
far as to issue a sarcastic public apology to the country. And I think they've shown that they really have no reason to care about missing out on the Chinese market. Well, we made it through every major controversy this show has experienced in its 25 years. I hope I did a good job. I hope you guys liked it. I may have missed a few smaller ones, so if you can think of any, feel free to let me know. But yeah, that is it. Are there any questions?
Oh, fuck is happening?
Sir, this is a Wendy's. Oh, I must have forgotten to take my meds today.
Pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That was actually an interesting video, Blooms. Yeah, I'm gonna leave the original in the description as per usual. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to let me know. If you guys want more of this, make sure to let me know. If you guys want to go show him some support, I'd appreciate it. If you enjoyed the reaction, do the same here. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see next. There's links in the description for the Kick. So if you want to follow me on Kick, so you know you can be there when I stream, that'd be really cool. And there's links for the Discord as well as the gaming channel. It's all down there. It's all down there. Anyway, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm out. Peace.